Dr. Cherinka is a senior principal information systems engineer for MITRE, and Mr. Prezzama is an associate department head for MITRE. And I think rather than spending our time on the introductions, we'll let them get to talk.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here today. My name is Joe Prezzama, and I'll be presenting today with my co-author, Dr. Bob Cherinka. Today we will be discussing the utility of bringing interdisciplinary collaboration to real-world problems. Modern organizations are facing the need for new collaborative sources every day. They're coping with this by their leaders setting out sound strategic visions, by utilizing infrastructure and test beds for information sharing, experimentation, and prototyping, by embracing interdisciplinary sources that are open to the communities, such as government agencies, academia, and subject matter experts. The objective should be to have a rich set of innovative, interdisciplinary resources at our disposal to utilize, tap into, and to meet our goals. This could result in a diverse partnering arrangement, as well as the creation of new ways of thinking. In this presentation, we will examine several approaches to foster open innovation through interdisciplinary collaboration, challenges, and competitions in support of key business operations and the workforce. And we highlight specific examples of their use in real-world environments. But before we get started, let me give you a little background into where we come from. Dr. Cherinka and I both work for the MITRE Corporation. MITRE was founded on the premise that government needs a partner to provide professional technical expertise in systems engineering and integration, a partner that could work in the public interest and draw out the best in the commercial sector. MITRE is a private, independent, non-for-profit organization chartered to work in the public interest. We partner with the government, applying systems engineering and advanced technology to address issues of critical national importance. MITRE manages 6 federally funded research and development centers, as you can see on the screen, and we support a broad, diverse set of sponsors in the U.S. government as well as internationally. If you recall, last summer, we gave a talk on approaches to foster open innovation, including the use of crowds and social media to leverage and utilize interdisciplinary sources. We defined the meaning of the term interdisciplinary within the education and training disciplines. Specifically in this context, the term interdisciplinary involves researchers, students, engineers, and teachers with the goal of connecting and integrating several academic schools of thought, professions, or technologies, along with their specific perspectives in pursuit of a common task. We also talked about the most common barriers to true innovation, as well as technologies and trends which we believe will fuel the spark of innovation in the near future. We highlighted several approaches to foster open innovation, including the use of crowds and social media for continuous improvement. We investigated the crowdsourcing model and its potential value applied to commercial and government environments. And we also highlighted some specific downsides to these approaches, including the perils of groupthink and how crowds could negatively impact the underlying goal. We found that interdisciplinary sources are available and leveraged every day and are becoming ubiquitous. New technological trends and approaches, when taken together, offer unprecedented access to information, people, even group sentiment, offering new ways to collaborate, connect producers to consumers, to investors, and ultimately to innovation. We discovered that large enterprises can adapt and have a golden opportunity to foster new approaches for open and continuous innovation success. Large enterprises are acclimating to these changes by embracing culture change, fostering business model change for new innovation, adapting to new enabling technologies, leveraging shifts in policy and regulation, and acknowledging the emergence of new business models and the disruption resulting from unpredictable events. So the question to ask ourselves is, how can we rise to the challenge of bringing interdisciplinary collaboration to real-world problems? We can recognize that we don't always have all the answers or all the talent necessary to succeed, as is becoming the norm. Or can the approaches we mentioned earlier really be used to effectively support real-world applications? And if we determine that they can, how will we use them to take advantage of interdisciplinary collaboration to drive innovative solutions in the workforce? So where do we want to be is the question. Well, we want to have a rich set of innovative interdisciplinary resources to tap into to meet our goals, which could result in diverse partnering and teaming arrangements, creating new ways of thinking about collaboration, innovation, teaming, competition, open communication, and transparency. So how do we get from here to there? First, we need to deal with reality. The reality that there exist hard problems that our modern organizations really don't know how to solve. That there may not be good understanding of the solution space within our organizations. That we may need to cast a wide net into the social pool of colleagues to help us get the answers that we need. And that the organizations need to deal with the ever-constrained resources in the form of funds and talent. But for a moment, as an example, let's step backward away from reality and talk about something a little futuristic. I would encourage those of you who took part in Dr. Gill's session yesterday to draw some parallels to this example. Let's imagine that our organization was tasked to design, develop, and launch the next generation of space flight vehicle, the USS Enterprise. Now, I know you're thinking, no way, it'll never happen, we can't do that. Obviously, this is a bold undertaking, one that no organization, to my knowledge, is currently equipped to handle. The technological and scientific breakthroughs necessary to make this a reality are enormous, maybe even unattainable, without interdisciplinary collaboration. So where would we start if we wanted to do this? Our organization would need to invest in a broad range of new technologies and disciplines to include communication systems, new sensor systems, computer displays. We would need to invest in weapon systems, even teleportation devices, including advanced propulsion systems and metallurgical sciences. All of these areas would need to be researched and invested in order to make this a reality. But most of all, it would take interdisciplinary partnering and teaming to make this happen. Clearly, this is a far-fetched example, but the underlying concept of needing interdisciplinary resources is very common. Modern organizations are facing these challenges every day. They are coping by their leaders setting sound strategic visions, by utilizing infrastructures and test beds for information sharing, experimentation, and prototyping, by embracing interdisciplinary sources that are open to communities, and by partnering and teaming and integrating. So to illustrate this, let's jump back to reality and take a look at a real-world example of casting the net in order to leverage interdisciplinary talent. The video we're about to show highlights a U.S. military program called Talos, the Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit. It's better known as Iron Man. The idea was born out of a requirement to help protect first responders from very dangerous environments. The government chose a non-traditional, challenge-based approach to procure this capability, taking advantage of interdisciplinary teams to help solve the problem. As we discussed yesterday in Dr. Gill's session, a mediator is being used to bridge the gap between these teams, and we MITRE are filling that role. Directly following this video, Dr. Cherinka will pick up where I left off to continue the conversation and highlight additional examples.
Basically, I'm here to announce that we're building Iron Man. I'm going to blast off in a second. This has been a secret project we've been working on for a while.
A new type of suit being manufactured for the U.S. Army will not only help keep troops safer, but also make them look like something straight out of a movie. And has some pretty cool features. I mean, how much more awesome does it get than a real-life Iron Man?
The Army has commissioned a tactical assault light operator suit which would provide superhuman abilities like night vision, enhanced strength, and protection from gunfire. Each suit would have an onboard computer.
Oh, but it doesn't stop there.
This is Talos that can ward off explosions, seal wounds. Talos would also be climate controlled to withstand extreme heat or cold. How cool is that?
And there's more to it than meets the eye when it comes down to the idea of the new armor. Admiral Bill McRaven, who unveiled the idea at a conference in May, tells NPR the idea was inspired by the death of one of his troops in Afghanistan. Since then, he's been campaigning for better body armor.
Well, I haven't put effort into ensuring that particularly that guy going through the door, in this case, is protected to the maximum capability that we could provide him as a nation.
Researchers hope to have Talos available for Green Berets and Navy SEALs on dangerous missions within the next 3 years. For Newsy, I'm Jasmine Bailey.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks, everyone, for having us here this morning. So I just want to pick up where Joe left off, and we'll get back to talking a lot more about Talos. But just one thing I will point out is, as the video did allude to, this is one example highlighting how the U.S. government and federal agencies are seeking new ways and non-traditional approaches to acquire capabilities. So what I'm going to do is take a step back and spend a little bit more time and talk about traditional versus non-traditional approaches, highlight what challenges are in this context, and then show a number of examples, including Talos, being applied to supporting key business functions in the workforce. So for those of you who have any familiarity with DoD Acquisition, this is an actual process. And it's kind of scary, but this is what they go through. And this is a very unwieldy, very complex process, which typically was designed for building large weapon systems, years ago, but it's still in use today. And it definitely was not designed for IT systems or software systems. This process, to go from beginning to end, takes at least 5, and in many cases, over 10 years to complete. It requires a lot of upfront planning and understanding of what your solution is, right? So you have to understand your requirements, you have to do market analysis and analysis of alternatives and figure out almost what you want well ahead of time. And then you go through a very linear sequential life cycle, your traditional waterfall, right? Your requirements to design, development, test, and then somewhere many years later, if you're lucky, you deliver a system to a user. And in most cases, this process ends up being late, over budget, or what is actually given to the user does not reflect what their original requirement was, or what their requirement is at that point in time. And there are many, many examples of how, how this is flawed in terms of a process. In fact, there's a lot of study and a lot of data that kind of show a rate of about 68% of failures using this process. So as a result, the federal government is really migrating towards embracing new approaches, non-traditional approaches, and effectively a move towards Agile Engineering. And what is that? It's really a movement toward thinking about incremental delivery, iterative, collaborative approaches that integrate or bring together your analysis, design, and testing activities all into the development phase. And as you spiral through these phases, the various feature by features are being developed and more requirements are emerging as you go through, such that you have very frequent releases to the user is engaged throughout the process, but what they see is a tangible capability that they can start to use right away. And that's very important. So one important aspect of this, in terms of applying Agile, is the use of the challenge. And you've probably seen and heard a lot about challenges, right? Challenges and competitions are just one tool that the federal agencies are looking at to drive innovation and solve hard problems, whether they're technical in nature, scientific, or just creatively looking for new ideas to a problem. These challenges work well when you have a very loose understanding of what it is you want, and you're willing to balance that need and to accept some immaturity early in the process so that can grow and become discovered throughout. So as I said, challenges are everywhere, right? If you go on the net right now and just Google challenges and competitions, there's numerous organizations that are offering prizes and challenges, and I'll highlight a few of those, and some of these are listed here, right? Challenge-based acquisition it's effectively a contest, and prizes are given for the benefit to encourage participation from interdisciplinary sources and the public sector in particular to benefit the government in this case. These techniques are often based on the theory of game theory, or gamification, which we talked about a lot last year, if you recall. It's effectively bringing in game-like mechanics into non-traditional contexts to help engage users early and often throughout the process and give them some motivation to do that. So with the increase of using challenges and competitions, obviously there's now an increase in the last year and a half or so that we've seen in the U.S. government publishing guidance, policy, directives, etc., to help encourage the use and to guide the use of challenges and competitions in the workforce. So at this point, I'd like to go back to the Talos Example, which is an ongoing project underway right now, and let's take a look at how they're applying agile methodologies and a challenge to acquire some capability.
I'll end it there and just say, one, thanks for taking the time to join us. You need to know that I am very committed to this. I'm very committed to it because I'd like that last operator that we lost to be the last one we ever lose in this fight or the fight of the future. And I think we can get there. I am committed to this. At the end of the day, I need you and industry to figure out how you're going to partner with each other to do something that is right for America.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, good. So let's take a look. Let's kind of think about what we just saw. Right? We saw a lot of concepts in that one little video. First and foremost, we saw that they're driving for a lot shorter time frame to capability than 10 years. Right? They're talking about using the interdisciplinary teams to drive innovation to go to capability within 12 to 18 months. We saw that a government that had a motivation, right, protect an individual, they did not have a clear understanding of what their solution space is, so they opted with the loose requirements of survivability and optimized performance, which in turn drove out some very loose idea or notion that whatever this thing is, whatever this Iron Man suit looks like, it needs some kind of armor or protection. It needs some kind of health monitoring and health awareness system. It needs the ability to communicate both inside and amongst the components, as well as from the individual to the outside world. It needs sensors to understand what the outside world is and what's around it, the presence. There's a lot of complex components to this, which all have to come together, and they don't really know how to solve all of these. And so by using a challenge, they're driving the need to bring in talent from interdisciplinary sources to kind of work together. And we will start to, in the next few slides, I'm going to show you, take a closer look at some key areas and key aspects. So the very first one that obviously jumps out is motivation. In this case, there needs to be a good business reason or some kind of challenge that motivates all the stakeholders to want to participate. It's okay to have loose requirements at the start, and as long as you're able to allow those requirements to emerge over time. However, once that need is determined, you really need to have senior leadership buy in, own the problem, and then commit resources to make it happen, but also to provide the motivation and the culture in the organization to embrace innovation. In the Talos example, we had that. We had the motivation of protecting warriors. It became the commander's _1 priority, and he emphasized that for his science and technology communities to get engaged, which is a non-traditional approach for this organization. They're in the lead in terms of this acquisition. He also committed the use of resources and effectively, specifically told them not to use the traditional approach. The next thing stands out is collaboration. This emphasizes open information sharing, transparency, as well as the exchange of intellectual property. For Talos, they opened the challenge to anyone. It is actually open right now. Anyone here who has an interest can still sign up through the announcement and join a team. As long as you agree to openly share with the other participants and you allow the government to control the IP, the motivation is there to use open technologies and approaches. Teaming is highly encouraged, right? Diverse stakeholders working together and bringing experts from interdisciplinary sources really is the goal here. And there's motivation to self-team. So if you look at those 46 teams, they're comprised of academic and industry partners. Talos had over 46 of those in the current challenge. And they use technologies like Google Hangouts and telepresence devices to keep distributed parties engaged. The other key aspect is the open environment itself. Talos encouraged innovation through the use of garage demonstration atmosphere, right? Very informal setting, and having a mindset that it's actually okay to fail in your prototyping in order that we can learn and succeed in the end. You actually want to do the failure early and often if you can. Obviously, Agile Engineering, they're taking a heavy use of storyboarding and concept design throughout the process, early prototypes throughout, as well as continuous integration and an evolving technology baseline. So you need to really, if you're going to embrace this approach like they are, You need to have the mindset that it's okay to be working with immature technologies as long as those can be integrated and matured in a very quick process. So that's Talos. I'm going to step back for 1 second and show you some other examples as they apply to the workforce. Namely, in the area of innovation, where you're trying to seek answers to a hard problem. Acquisition, much like Talos, where you're trying to acquire a capability. Capability assessment, there's some initiatives using challenges to get user experience evaluated and tested, as well as in terms of hiring new talent for an organization. So the first thing I'm going to talk about or highlight is innovation, right? This example highlights a government initiative to support projects seeking to spark new ideas. And this particular framework, challenge.gov, is administered by the U.S. General Services Administration, or GSA. And basically, it's a collection of challenge and prize competitions, all of which are run by more than 50 federal agencies. And these challenges span, as I said earlier, technical, scientific, or creative in nature. Good examples of this, if you go to this website, you can participate in any of these challenges. There's some really good prize money. Right now, I was on there last night, and NASA has an asteroid data hunter challenge where they're offering $35,000 to the winner. You have the Department of Health Services looking for innovations in inspiring hypertension, and they're giving out a $50,000 award for the winner. The Department of Energy, they're doing the microgrid challenge, basically trying to build resilient communities in case of climate change, and they're giving out $600,000. So there's really good examples of innovation being done and driven through the use of challenges. Another example is the use of federal summits. You know, this is where there's some stated purpose or problem, and academia, government, and industry all come together to collaborate and talk about best practices and recommendations for addressing those challenges. Mobile computing and cloud computing are two examples where the federal government challenged the public sector and the academic sector to come to the table and identify not only solutions but also drive curriculum in the educational institutions. In terms of acquisition, here's an example of a intelligence community sponsor who's looking at interface challenges and usability challenges as part of a source selection that's going to be happening later in the fall. This is a very complex system, and so the interface challenge is allowing the engineers to evaluate the vendor's proposal and technical solutions in a hands-on fashion. And followed by that, the winners of that challenge move on to the usability challenge, where users will use the product in a realistic scenario, and the winners of that will ultimately get the contract. We've talked about this last year, but robotics challenges are an example of capability assessment. We talked about the DARPA Grand Challenge. You have the JADA Robotic Rodeo. And MITRE has, this past year, we had a number of challenges in the underwater robotics area as well. And then finally, the last example I'm going to use is hiring. This is an example of using competitions such as the National Capture the Flag competition, which is a cybersecurity competition for college and high school level students to participate, but it's actually for the companies such as MITRE, it's a good forum for hiring, right? Student performance is collected, student ranking is collected during the game. Resumes are the only requirement for a student to participate in the competition. And at the end of that competition, you have a really good set of hands-on data that you could use, managers can use for offering internships or jobs. So let's take a step back and kind of talk about some of the benefits and the challenges. You can read some of the benefits, but they span across the need for interdisciplinary sources. They allow you to create something new and a new think. It allows an organization to focus. You know, now you have a better understanding of what it is you're seeking. The innovation itself is driven as diverse parties start to participate and communicate with each other, and you do not constrain any thoughts in this process. So That's where the innovation and the synergy all play together. Verification allows the government to understand what they're seeking early and not wait 10 years to figure out that you didn't get what you asked for. And obviously, the competition itself, by its nature, offers fairness and promotes the innovation just by its nature. Of course, there's a lot of challenges to this. I won't go into these. Funding, motivating ideas to come from various sources. These are all examples of some of the challenges that an organization would have to kind of work through. So there are some key takeaways that I'd like to kind of leave you with, and that is, one is user engagement was really important if these methods are really going to be embraced. The quick turn to prototyping throughout the process, very instrumental in actually reducing the time to capability. And then the open and diverse participation helps the government to understand their knowns and their unknowns a lot better. So in conclusion, ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to a tolerance level, right? It's the need to balance your ability or your need to have a capability early to having and accepting some level of maturity and technical ability and characteristic. So with that in mind, I'd like to kind of conclude by saying, in terms of engineering, the potential for interdisciplinary methods is very important, and NAGIB, as you know, that's the theme of these conferences. You're our Iron Man, and with that, Joe and I would like to thank all of you for allowing us to share this with you, this story.
As usual, please hold any questions or remarks.
Joe, do you want to get your...
All